Shalom, Kima.
Rabbi.
Yeah. Okay, all right. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Shabbos Daf Kuf Mem Tes. We're going to be learning about many interesting dinim today, some of which many people did not hear about yet. We're going to be learning about certain circumstances where one may not read on Shabbos off a list. Likewise, we're going to be speaking again, this will be the second time, about the Isser of reading Shtore Hedyotas. We're going to follow Shitas Rashi. That means that one may not read financial documents on Shabbos. We're going to have a very important machlekes tanoim, whether Isurei D'Rabbanan, rabbinic decrees relating to Shabbos, were formulated without exceptions, loy plug, or no, or are they also subject to exceptions? We don't apply loy plug. Imagine a machlekes tanoim. We're going to learn a machlekes whether one is allowed to look in a mirror on Shabbos, herst, and there might be an afkaminim, whether the mirror is a portable mirror, whether the mirror is affixed on the wall. We're going to speak about B'chlal Isurim, whether the Ari Isurim about looking in the mirror to begin with. We're going to speak more about, as we began Perek Shoyel, various Isurim Midrabanan regarding activities that one may not do, not only not on Shabbos, not even on Yom Tov, and that is measuring, weighing, buying with an exact count, borrowing using the word halveni, paying back a loan using the word pirayon. We're going to learn that a person is allowed to lend to his bnei bayis meaning family members that are still living off his estate with interest, in order for them to taste the bitterness of paying back interest, even though when they're paying it back, the money that they have is vital from the same source, which is why it's permitted. We're going to learn about the Issa Midrabanan of gambling. It's considered gezel because asmachta loikanya. We're going to have amazing agada tegamaris. Kol shechaveroi nenesh al yodoi. We're going to teach what that means. At least we'll explain one approach. And finally, we're going to at least begin, let's see how far we get, into the sugya about the cruelty and the evil of Nebuchadnezzar and his downfall. So let us start. We left off on Kuf Mem Ches Amid Beis by the Mishnah, right? 3 lines before the bottom of the Amid. Moina Adam. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'ar kol midbar. It says the Mishnah, Moina Adam es oirchav. A person may count the number of his guests, right, that he wishes to invite. He's counting them, pasha, to know how much food is needed to be served. Likewise, he's allowed to count the espar peroisov, his desserts, but he can only count it mipiv orally, avoloi menaksav, but he may not count people that potentially will be coming to sit around this table from a list. About that. You have a list of guests who may not be on the list. And we'll see in the Gemara 2 reasons for that. Many dinim today will be amazing. Next din, may face Adam in bnei beis yala shulchan. A person is allowed to cast lots, to make lotteries. We're speaking both on Shabbos and on Yom Tov regarding who is going to get what portion of food. Why would you think there's an issue with making lotteries regarding food? We'll see about that more in the Gemara. But with your bnei bayis, you are allowed to do it. Now we're going to read the Mishnah the way we have it here in the Girsa. What we're learning now will be amended in the Gemara. Even though you are allowed to draw a lottery, again, which one is going to get which portion, as long as all the portions are equal. But if the portions are unequal, and the lottery will determine who gets the larger, who gets the smaller, the way that it's written here is, that is something that you may not do with your bnei bayis. Everything is loaded, Chavre. We'll learn a lot more about each one of the Gemara. The Mishnah goes weiter, speaking about lotteries, about making a goydel to see who gets what portion. Umatilin chaloshin ala kachim b'yomtiv. That on Yom Tov and on Shabbos, Kohanim are allowed to draw lotteries. The Mishnah uses the words chaloshin because chaloshin also means a puria, a lottery. In other words, after the carbon was sacrificed, the question is which piece goes to which kohen. So the Mishnah basically implied that you can only cast such lotteries with your bnei bayis. These are all new topics. But the exception is that kohanim, even though they are not bnei bayis, they are also allowed to draw a lottery. And then the next word in the Mishnah seems to contradict it. But they cannot draw a lottery to determine who gets what portion. It's mamash like a Midrash Aliyah. Okay, guys, we read the Mishnah, and the Gemara is going to unpackage every single line of it. So let's start about Kuf Mem Tes Amud Aleph. Right, the first din that the Mishnah is teaching us is that if you have, that's the example, you have a lot of guests that are coming, and you have to determine, do you have enough place for people to sit? Do you have enough food for people to get served? And you have a list of the guests, and you want to read the people's or count them off a list. The Mishnah is from the memory, you can do it. From the list, don't do it. The question is, why not? My tama. So the Gemara gives 2 reasons. Rav Bibi and Abayim. Rav Bibi says that we have to read, keep already your finger in Ashi. Right, my time, so Rav Bibi says, you might erase the name of your list. Well, how would that help you? So Rashi explains. Sheyira, when you will notice that that you don't have enough food for all of the people that you intended to invite, and what do? I over-invited. Now, what does crossing them off the list help? Speaking about a person, as it's the common, that when you make a big meal, you have people helping you. Call them a shamish. You want to make sure that the shamish does not invite everyone on the list because you're not going to have enough food. I'm reading in Rashi, so from the memory where there's no chance you're going to cross anything off, that's okay. But reading from a guest list, a list says, Rabbi, that is exactly what the Mishnah is saying, is something that you may not do. You might come to erase a person who you will realize you can't afford to have around your table. Abaya Amar has nothing to do with Shashama Yimchaik, even if there is no such a fear, it's anyways awesome. Why? Zera Shema Yikra b'shtadi hadyoitos. Oh, so shtadi hadyoitos, no chevra. We have a machlokes from many Rishonim what that means. Rashi here writes that shtadi hadyoitos refers exclusively, right, the third line or the fourth line of Rashi, to business-related documents. Part of the Isur Medivrei Kabbalah, even though you're only reading it with your eyes, don't read financial documents, which would include not reading the Wall Street Journal or other articles that are business-related. And my friends, this is a limited understanding of Shtari Hadyoitos. You can already see here in Tosfos, he broadens it. This is a very huge topic. There are certain secular books, according to some, that may not be read on Shabbos, but let's stick with Rashi. You may not read Shtari Hadyoitos, financial documents. A list of guests looks similar. Document, list. So if you're going to read this, you might read that. My benayu, what will be the nafkim? Don't forget, the Mishnah is applying it to not reading a list of your guests. So it says the Gemara, and we're going to have, it's amazing, so many attempted ikebenayus. 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll see it's moedik. Ikebenayu, the first answer, try number 1, because of akoisel umidlei. That means that the list was written on the wall, but not eye height, not shoulder height, high up. It's written so high up in the wall that it's difficult for you to go and erase it. So Laman the Amar, this is Rav Bibi, that the Isra is only because of Shema Yimchaik. If the names of the guests are written in a place that it's hard to get to, then you are allowed to read off it. However, Laman the Amar Shema Yikra, but if even though the list is hung up the band, but it's on a paper hung up over there, if you're going to read that, you might end up reading Shtari Hadyotis. And right away the Gemara counters. Laman the Amar Shema Yimchaik. Why are you allowing him to read off a list that's hung up high? Still, why does he also not have a fear? And furthermore, says the Gemara, I mean, this is a classical case where normally you would say loy plug. If Chazal give a gzeira. So you're saying that in this circumstance, you're not going to come to erase it. So what? Say loy plug. The Hatanya, now really, it's a Mishnah, which is why the Maseiras Hashasa ends it to Ba'atran. And we learned this above in the beginning of the Masechta. When we learned the din that a person may not read Shabbos right near a candlelight. Remember Shema Yata? Remember that? Because maybe the oil will already be coming to the end, and you want to feed more oil into the wick. And when you tilt it, you're going to be violating kindling, Mavir. And now that the Chachamim said you may not read Lo'er Haner, so on that, V'amar Rabba, even if in this circumstance, the candle is 2 stories above you, so it's very difficult for you to go and yatta it. Doesn't matter. Or an ox goad, or the height of an ox goad, became a typical means in the times of Chazal to measure something. Even if it's, again, another type of measurement, if it's very tall, very high up, or more, even if it's 10 stories up, lo yikra. Why lo yikra? Because we have a concept called loy plug. So why wouldn't we say loy plug? So the Gemara goes back on the Ika Benayu. You're right. Indeed, Rabbi will agree that if you have a list and the list is hung up high on the wall, also you may not read the names of your guests off. Eloi Kebenayu, the nafkamina will be between Rabbi and Abayim, the cause of Akoisel, that it's written on the wall, umitate. Mitate means low. Low doesn't mean very low. It means it's near you. It's your eye height, your shoulder height. But hold on. So 1 second. So why would that be permitted? Lamanda Amar Shema Yimchoik, it's right there. Hashiram. But Lamanda Amar Shema Yikra, Loy Hashiram. There is no Shema Yikra Gezeda if something is written not on a note and hung on the wall, written on the wall itself. Because Guda, Bishtara, because Guda means avant, something written on a wall with a document, Loy Mechalek, they are so dissimilar that you will never come to read Shtari Hediotos if you will read things that are written on a wall. Whatever Shtari Hediotos is, it's never written on the wall. It's written on a paper, written on a parchment, written on a document. Oh, so if the concept is that Shema, Yikra, then anything written on the wall is permitted. If it's because Shema Yimchaik, then you're not allowed to read it. The Gemara is still not happy. Ulamanda Amar Shema Yikra, which is Abaya, but still, why will he disagree with Rabbi? Lecha Shema Yimchaik. And indeed, the Gemara is saying he would also have that fear. Elei Kebinayu, the Choyik, that it's engraved either on a tablet or on a pinkas. It's engraved on a tablet, in other words, or on a board. This was one of the mediums through which they would have like this disposable pad. So they would have a little board, a large board, and they would put the wax on it. And with the stylus, they would engrave whatever they would want to write. And then when it would be full, they would melt the wax. Now erasing that, I mean, through putting a fire and through melting it, that's much harder than erasing something off a list. Oh, so that's the thing. So Lamanda Amar Shema Yimchaik, we say Loy Chashinan. Why Loy Chashinan? Because it's difficult to erase off this type of tablet. Lamanda Amar Shema Yikra, still it's similar enough to a document Chashinan. And again the Gemara says, still, Ulamanda Amar Shema Yimchaik, and I get it that it's hard to erase something off this type of tablet, but also why is he not Choshish Lechosh Shema Yikra? If you're going to answer, as we had before, now something written on a wall is so dissimilar from a Shtad Hedyet that Loy Mechalaf, maybe say the same thing with a tablet. That's not true. Writing on a wall versus a Shtad Hedyet is so dissimilar we won't confuse one with the other. But we don't say that by a pinkas. Tanya, we learned in a brayso, this is a brayso elaborating the din I'm learning in the Mishnah. In other words, you have a lot of guests, and you want to figure out who are you sitting indoors, who are you sitting outdoors. Indoor seats are more chashuv. Outdoors is the overflow, but you have to hold cup. You don't want to insult people, so you want to look at a list to see all the names, to not to oversee anyone, to make sure who's in and who's out. And the Mishnah says what you could do, and as well as looking at the list of guests to match them up with all of the portions of dessert that you have. All of that may be done, says the Braisa, as we just learned. If the lists of your guests are written on the wall, because a wall, something that's written on a wall, is so dissimilar from a Shtad Hedyet, you'll never confuse it. It won't be Shema Yikra, Shtad Hedyotis. But if it's written on a tablet, you may not read from it. Clearly, you see that the concept of Shema Yimchaik, right? Or no, even if not Shema Yimchaik, that even though it's hard to erase something written on a tablet, but a tablet is similar enough to Shtari Hedyotos that we are chayshish that if you'll become habituated to read off a tablet, you might end up reading Shtari Hedyotos. And now the Gemara is saying, hey Chidami, if we're speaking about ink, right, written on the wall with ink, then it doesn't make sense. Then a tablet and the wall are the same. You might confuse it with Shtari Hedyotis. The choyik, it's engraved on the wall. Oh, that's already completely dissimilar. And nevertheless, Viktani, that if it's engraved, that we have engraved on the wall, gekratzt on the wall, you never confuse it with Shtari Hedyotis. That will be confused with study adyotis. So we're back to what case will there be a nafkamina between a bibi and a baya? Ella, the final nafkamina will be la'olam the kasav ha'koisa. Umidli, it was written high up. Now, written high up, my friends, if the issue is that you might confuse it with study hadyotis, we already established that something that's engraved on the wall high up will not be confused with study hadyotis. So that's out. Elama, we are saying that they both have to be chayish also, that you might erase it. But since it's high up, in this particular case, it's difficult to get to it. So what will be the machlekes whether you are allowed to read from it or not? The machlekes is in the very topic of loy plug. Do we say loy plug like we just learned Rabbi did? That Rabbi took the din of Shemayata and he says, no matter what, you may never read lo'oid haner, or do you reject Rabbi? And you say no, that if Chazal made exeter, and if the reason is not applicable in a particular case, in that case there is no exeter. This is a very fundamental machlekes. Or the kakashalach the Rabbi loy plug the Rabbi tanoi, and that will also be the Amoyroim of Bibi and Abaya, right? Each one taking the side of this machlekes tanoim. The Tanya, as we learned, Moina Adam es Oichav. Again, clear about this topic. You are allowed to count your guests, best part and your dessert servings. Mipiv orally, Avaloi Menaksav, right? And Loi Menaksav means even if it's written on the wall. Also, you may not read from it. Rav Acha says no, that Michsav Shalgaba Koisel, you may read. Now, the Gemara is asking regarding the shita of Rabbi Acha, right? The Tana, Hechidami, Ilemidiksiv, Mitata, if it's written near you, then Lech Hashem Yimchak. Elolav, he must be referring to the Kasav Midli, is written high up. And if it's written high up, he's saying it's allowed, hold on, light plug, Shmamina, that this question of whether you apply a light plug when it comes to rabbinic enactments regarding Ilcha Shabbos or not, is a Tanai Shmamina. Very good. Interestingly, even though they're arguing Shema, Gezeda Shema Yimchak, Gezeda Shema Yikra B'Shtari Hadyotos, we are concluding that they really both subscribe to both. Everyone is moided that if it's written in a way that you can confuse this with the Shtari Hadyotos, you may not read from it. Everyone agrees to it. The only thing is that if it's written on a wall, it's already so dissimilar to Shtari Hadyotos, it's not Shayach Shema Yikra. But everyone agrees, yes, Shema Yimchak exists. And indeed, if it's near you, everyone will say it's Aser. But if it's far away, that's where you have the machlokes. And now the Gemara says, we have another case regarding not Ilcha Shabbos. Yes, Ilcha Shabbos, regarding Loi Plug, whether we say Loi Plug or not. The Tanyam, Ein Royim B'Mara B'Shabbos, that you may not look into a mirror on Shabbos. Now, by the way, Tosfos, not over here, but Tosfos mentions that this entire Braisa must be speaking about a woman, because we mentioned this a few times already, that according to somebody Shainim, a man is never allowed to look in a mirror because it's called Loi Silbash. Can you imagine? It's Isur Da'iraisa. However, I think Tosfos himself writes that if you are living in a place where men do groom themselves, then there is no such Isur, and that is brought down in the Ramah. So whether this is in the times where no men look in the mirror, so it's only referring to a woman, whether it's referring to a place that men also groom themselves, so a man is allowed to look in the mirror, so then this is for both. But on Shabbos, you ever heard this? Ein Royin B'Mara, you may not look in the mirror. Why can you not look at yourself in the mirror? Because you might find some of your hairs that need to be trimmed, and you might forget that it's Shabbos, and you might get a scissors. We'll see a better way of defining this, and you might cut your hair. So, Ein Roim B'Mara B'Shabbos. However, Rabbi Meir, and according to he brings from the Rif, or this Shita's Rebbe, or he brings from the Rosh, or Rabbi Yehuda, it's one of those three, they say depends. Matir B'Mara Kavua B'Koisel. If the mirror is affixed on the wall, then there is no such Isur D'Rabbanan. And now the Gemara says, what's the nafkamina? Let's go with Rav Meir. That Rav Meir allows, because even if you're going to see something that needs to be trimmed, by the time you go and you get your scissors, and by the time you come back, mitkari, you'll remember, it's Shabbos. So and if it's not affixed to the wall, by the time you get the scissors and come back, you'll also remember that it's Shabbos. So clarifies the Gemara that we're speaking about a metal mirror. The metal mirror, unlike today's mirrors that everything is made in a way that no one can get hurt, that mirror was very sharp. And when a person looked in the mirror, and if there was something on their body that needed more grooming, so then they would use the mirror for the grooming. They didn't have to go anywhere. So if there was a strand of hair that was up too long, they would cut it with the mirror. So that was the isur. So therefore, you can't look at a mirror. Rav Meir says, hold on, if it's affixed on the wall and you can't use the mirror as the scissor, you can look at it. What about the Tanach? But the Tanach also knows that you can't use the mirror if it's affixed on the wall. And the Tanach knows that if you're going to go and get a scissors, by then you'll remember it's Shabbos. Yeah, but light plug. Amazing. So really the machlokes is whether you say light plug or not. Right, you have a hair that is too long or too not in place, you might cut it. And when it's affixed to the wall, there you won't be able to cut it. There you're not going to go get a scissors. By the time you get a scissors, you'll remember it's Shabbos. The Tanach says, I don't care. Since you may not use a mirror that's not light plug. And Rav Meir or Rabbi or Rabbi Yehuda, they don't always say light plug when it comes to Isurei Shabbos. And that takes us back. And indeed, in other words, we are now coming to an understanding that there was really, when Rabbi said on the Mishnah DAF Yud Aleph, that you may never use a oir haner, because Shema Yater. And Rabbi says, I don't think that if it's high up on the ceiling, like today's chandeliers, you're good. No, light plug. No, it's not true. Machlokes Tanoim. Rabbi holds like light plug, like the Tanach, but if you were to paskin like Rav Meir over here, then you wouldn't be allowed to use a ner that's up there. And if you have a list that now is difficult for you to erase because it's written high up on the wall, you can read off the list. Now, if it's similar to Shtari Hadyotis, that's another topic, but it has to be this similar to Shtari Hadyotis. Okay, more about reading on Shabbos. Ksav Hamahalech Tachas Hatzura. This whole daf is filled with things that many people are not familiar with. If you have a painting, my friends, and you have a description under the painting, what are we basically learning? That you can't stop read everything on Shabbos. It comes from the issue of reading Shtari Hadyotos, but you see it expanded. Can you read a caption, huh? That's what it's called. There's a description under a tzura. Says the Braisa, Ksav, Hamahalach Tachas Atzura, or the Tachas had the Yoikoinois. The Yoikoinois are figurines. I think it's called a tableau. Tableau is when they would make little images depicting a scene in a very dramatic way. So they would have these little imagelach that would be the depicting, and Rashi says, David and Goliath, or certain animals. It was like a three-dimensional, a three-dimensional demonstration of a certain act. And underneath it, you would have a description. Was idas? Says this Braisa, Asur lekroisei b'Shabbos. Why? You look inside the Rashi, same thing, Shema Yikra b'Shtari Hadyotos. No, it's being that we're not allowed to read Shtari Hadyotos, even if we're going to go with Rashi, which is the most limiting Rishon, you can't read financial documents, which is a Gzeira. Normally, guys, we never make a Gzeira l'Gzeira. Here we do. Certain things that Chazal felt if you'll start reading that, your Shabbos will become a chulal. Then you'll end up reading Shtari Hadyotos. You can't even read descriptions under these types of demonstrations. Now, by the way, the Braisa is speaking about these tableaus, these types of figurines. This is a getchkala, right? So says the Braisa, the diyoikna atzma, just for you to know, forget about reading what it says underneath it. Looking at a diyoikna, even in the weekdays, is also lishtakelba. Wow, because it says, and look at this drush, it says in Kedoshim, al tifnu el ha'elilim. Don't turn to idols. So what do Chazal say? That from there you learn you can't look at a little statue. My Talmud, how do you see that you can't look at a diyoikna from this pasuk? Amar Rav Chanan, I'll tell you why. Change the vowels. Guys, listen to how you read this. Al tefanu Kael is God Almighty, midatchem. Don't remove Hashem from your minds. How are you removing Hashem from your minds? When you're reading these Narishkeit, you're looking at this, at that moment, you're not concentrating on God. Imagine now, how far do you extend this to? One thing, let's read one Tosfos at least. And Tosfos from the narrow to the wide, towards the end of the narrow. So Tosfos says that that the Beshavya L'Shem Avodas Gelula, that this whole issur is that the people who made these tableaus, they made them as some sort of idol. That is where it's usur. Interesting. He Mamish limits it. But Avalunoi, which is in the Nadish world that we're living in right now, but if it was made for entertainment, if it was made for art, then Tosfos says it's okay. All right. And this is, again, a huge topic, but we'll move on. At least we touched upon it. So what did we learn now? We learned the concept that there are certain documents that one may not read on Shabbos. I want you to know that Rashi is the most limiting one. And there are others that have broadened it a lot. And they really limit many other non-Chodesh books to be read on Shabbos. Now, according to Rashi, it's related to business. According to other Rishonim, it's not necessarily business related, but it's not Shabbos related. This is Shabbosdik. And imagine, even Lashitas Rashi, that because of Shema Yikra B'Shtari Yadyotis, imagine you can't read a list of guests. Now that Taka Shema Yimchoik, I can relate to more. Shema Yikra, and if you have, imagine, this is almost like, I don't know, a comic book, and reading those pictures and there's annotations underneath it. You can't read it.
Rabbi, what about place cards? Place cards and Shabbos table, place cards.
Cards is, you're not reading a list. It's not a list. And there, if you want to get rid of it, I want to answer. Place cards is not a problem, because if I don't want to invite that guest, I just throw out the place card. The problem of Shema Yimchoik, you're saying about Shema Yikra Shtari Yadyotis. I don't know. Good. These are good questions. Like, how much do you broaden this? So when something is new, the mind goes meshuggah, because we don't know the limits of this. But I will get, there's a study of
Did you say that Wall Street Journal is Shetri Hadiotis?
For sure, the Kulam. There's no debate about it. I don't want to keep on talking. But what did we learn yesterday? Hanachli Yisrael Mutav Shiyah.
No. It depends what section. There's probably the travel section, and these type of sections are not a problem. But the first section of the business is a problem.
Rabbi Shemai says that all of the Fruma magazines, all Kodesh, all fine and voil, they make a living off advertisements. What's the advertisements? Business. He shies against it. How can you read it? You'll pick up these journals on Shabbos. There's 3.5 articles, which are beautiful, and then there are 80 pages of ads. What's every ad? The ad is a business. That's study of yoitis. You're figuring out that this shekel you'll pay instead of $5,000, you'll pay $4,800, and you'll remember that. That's study of yoitis. All right, let's go weiter. Okay, next. The next topic. This Mishnah is mamish moedidik. You guys, lotteries. Whoever thought? So the Mishnah says, in your family, you can make lotteries. So shtel zechvar, you have a mishpacha, and then there's the center plate, and then the kinderlach are fighting who's getting what chicken. So you're resolving it by making a lottery. And there you can do that. So meifis adam in bnei beisoy, in banov. So the Gemara is medayik, yeah, in banov in bnei beisoy in. But azoy on Shabbos and on Yom Tiv, to go ahead and to make a lottery, no, you can't do that. And I'll tell you why. My Tama, Kedrav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. That what? The Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Why would you make a lottery? Think about it. You know why you're making a lottery? Because people are fighting. Everyone says, I want that piece of meat that's bigger. In other words, make the need, why just avoid it. Why do you have to make a lottery? Is a haraya that you're sitting with people that are hamakpidim zedzeh. They're particular. Like that, they're not moichel, a little difference. They're not moichel. And therefore, if you'll make a lottery, what are we afraid? Now that we were megala, that these people are very particular and they're not moichel, they might end up measuring. No, that's bigger. They give me a piece from that, a piece from here. And measuring on Shabbos, if it is not l'tzoyrech mitzvah, it's called uvda d'chayil. So they might be over mishum mida, which you may not do on Shabbos midrabanan. They might violate the rabbinic of weighing things on Shabbos. They might violate on counting. Counting is, let's say I bought something before Shabbos. I bought 100 apples. If I only got 40, I'm not allowed to go on Shabbos or on Yom Tov to the storekeeper and tell him you owe me 60. I can't finalize a sale with a precise number. Or I might violate Lovin, which was the beginning of the Spedic. What did we learn in the Spedic? That Midrabanan, a person may not lend using the words halveni. We learned the exception that if it's Tzorech Shabbos and Yom Tov and you use the words she'eleni, that's okay. But we are afraid, again, if people are makbid, that's what happens. People say, okay, I want this, I want that, give me that part. If I don't know it, then lend it to me. They'll end up using the words halveni. Or paying back. Another thing, I'm not allowed to pay back something on Shabbos or on Yom Tov if I use the words I'm paying back. I got to use a different word. I got to say that I'm not being poideya, I'm being a chazara. If I use the word chazara, it's mutter. The same concept, because there, if I'm going to pay back, we're afraid that the guy is going to mark it, and it was paid, or the guy is going to demand it settled, he's going to rip it up. So the moment people are makbid, they put limits. B'yontiv. B'yontiv, guys, means even on yontiv. Daf kufram tesamad beis. And uche divrei beis hillel af mishum ribis. We just quoted this. No, it's sabisa is also midrabanan. Sabisa means a large quantity of a commodity. I cannot lend it to you by telling you, give that same amount back to me. Because it's shayach that by the time you'll give it back to me, it's going to be more valued. It's not ribis midoiraisa, it's ribis midrabanan. What about a piece of bread? A loaf of bread. It's something little. If people are not makbid, it's not a problem. Beis Hillel says, no, even a bread for a bread. And once you sit with people that are makpidim zeh and zeh, how do I know that? Because they want to make a lottery. Then among such people, you may not lend a loaf of bread to get back a loaf of bread. Because there it's going to bother them that by the time they gave it back, it was worth another 5 cents. So all of this is just right. All of this means that we're not allowed to make lotteries on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. Elama, with your b'nei bayis, you could. So the question is, it should be also, nevertheless, the fact that they want to make lotteries, they also might come, like we said, they might end up measuring, they might end up weighing, they might end up counting. So the Gemara says that you are allowed to loan money to your children, charge them interest. What does B'nai Beisa means? Rashi says, we're speaking about people that are living off you. So think about it. If you lend to your child money and you tell him to pay you back ribis, when he gives you back money, from whom does he have that money? From you. If he gives you back money with interest, from whom is that money? From you. So first of all, that's why it's not awesome, because it's like you're paying ribis to yourself. But why is it a good thing to do? Because kedei lahatimam tam ribis. You want for them to taste the bitterness of ribis. Oh, so therefore, what? So Alma, look inside Rashi, 4 lines from the top of the Amid. Kiven the Misheloihu, if it really all belongs to you, and kan iseribis, the Hilkach, therefore, Zakt Rashi, Gabamida, Umishkal, Uminyan, Nami loikepeidohu. Since it's all yours, we're not afraid that they're going to end up counting. Or even if they count, it doesn't really matter, because it's anyways it belongs to the same person. So why are you making a lottery? If everything belongs to you, you're making a lottery, Rashi says, because you want to make sure that there's no kina. So one way that a parent will feel, oh, there's a potential for jealousy. Why did you know the kid fight? Why did you give Chaim that piece and me the other piece? So the way to take away the jealousy by showing your children that you're not making preferential treatment, you make a lottery, everyone is really equal. But as far as a fear that if you're going to make a lottery, the kids amongst themselves are going to end up doing mida, mishkal, minyan, they won't do it. Because when everyone understands that it all belongs anyways to the same person, what are you measuring for? No one really owes anything to anyone. It's all from the same pocket. Why did the Mishnah say, and that was our gears of the Mishnah, that you are allowed to make a lottery on Shabbos and on Yom Tov to divide lunch, to divide the Shabbos and Yom Tov, but only if the portions are generally the same, But then the Mishnah says, money gedolah keneged money katana nami should also be allowed. Should also be allowed. Because again, they're only doing it to take away the potential jealousy. But if one kid will get more and the other one will get less, ultimately they're not going to start demanding to count to this, to that, because it belongs all to the same person. They're not going to say, you owe me. One kid will tell you, you owe it to me. How they need, lend me. They won't do that. So who cares if the portions are even dissimilar? And the Gemara says, you know what? You're right. We got the wrong version in the Mishnah. In other words, we got to make a chsura mechsera. You are allowed to make lotteries if you have around the chamber dissimilar portions. It's never going to lead to minyan, mishkol, and midah. Okay. However, now we're reading what Rabbeinu HaKadosh meant for us to chop in between the lines. By the way, chsura mechsera does not mean that we amend. It means that we have to understand that we have to add. Meifis adam in banavim b'nei beis al shulchan, and you are allowed to do it. Afilu man gedolah keneged man katana. And Taka, what's the reason my Tama Ked Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, that what, like we learned before, that you are allowed to lend the money on ribis? Why can you lend the money on ribis? Because when children are soymech shulchan aviyam, deep down they know it's all the same. It's all from the same pocket. The issue is only they don't want to feel, a child doesn't want to feel that my brother, my sister was given preferential treatment. So the moment a parent makes a lottery, it's gewaldic. The parent is showing, I'm not making preferential treatment. I know there's only one dessert that everyone wants. I know that. But I'm not choosing who's getting it. The lottery chose. It takes away kina. But the moment you took away kina, the kids amongst themselves understand it's all from the same pocket. And in one of them in the now, with others, Shabbos and Yom Tov, you may not make a lottery around the table. And there, you may not make a lottery even if it's similar portions. My Tama, okay, finished. Now, what about during the week? Mana gedolah keneged mana ketana. That af bechoil la'achedim aser. Wow. During the weekdays, if everyone paid the same amount of money, to go into a restaurant, and you have one piece that's substantially larger than the other, you may not make a lottery to resolve who's getting what. That's even the broadest issue. Why am I Tama Mishum Kuvya? Kuvya means throwing dice. Kuvya means gambling. And like Rashi tells us over here, 17, 18 lines from the top of the Amid, that gambling is called Gezel Midrabanan. Why? Because that's Smachto Leikanya. In other words, the loser does not really cede. He does not absolutely give up his ownership. The commitment that everyone made prior to the throw of the dice, that whoever will lose will walk away, no one really meant they're going to walk away b'leif shalom. They agreed to it because they thought they will win. So there's many dinim. Making a lottery around your house with b'nei bais on Shabbos and Yom Tov is mutter, even when the portions are dissimilar. Making a lottery with people that are not b'nei bais, the fact that they want to make a lottery, they're makpidim, who's going to get what piece. You can't do it to begin with, because that might end up, that will lead them to violate the rabbanans of measuring and of weighing v'chulin. Making lotteries during the week, when you have a money gedolah keneged money katana, this is called a gamble. Imagine everyone pays the same amount of money, but one person, the winner, is going to get not the 10-ounce ribeye, they're going to get the 30-ounce ribeye. Who's going to determine that? Whoever won the lottery. That's taka gambling. And that's also midrabanan. Mishum gezel. How amazing!
Rabbi, isn't there like a chinuch problem here that you're going to be mechanech your kids on something that's usser, just so they should feel the pain of it and therefore not do it? Does that make any sense? I never heard of such a thing.
If generally one may not make a lottery on Shabbos, it comes out that making a lottery is like a secondary gezerah. The gezerah is really, you can't measure things exactly on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. That's what you can do. Again, I just want to speak it out again. All of the achronim speak about that. Normally, we don't make gezerah l'gezerah. This is gezerah l'gezerah. Let's call it, it's a very weak derabanan. You can't make a lottery. If you make a lottery, what are you going to do? You're going to start measuring the portions. And if you'll do that, what did you violate? You only violated the issue of derabanan. But still, don't make a lottery. So with the children, because of shalom bias, because of kin, it shouldn't be kinam, Chazal Chatchila said you can do it. Okay. Right.
Yeah, but lending your kids with ribbis,
even more.
That's much more direct.
That was the chiddush of the Good Marav. He wanted people to feel how bad ribbis is, and guys, it's that bad. I know when people are desperate for money, so they're willing to do whatever it is. And next week I'll have the money back. Give me $5,000. I'll give you back next week $5,500. It's bitter. Before you'll turn around, you'll owe us $10,000 and you'll owe $20,000. Mamish like that. And you see this in life. And it kills people. It mamish kills people. Okay.
Rabbi, why could we do dreidels on Hanukkah then?
Dreidels on Hanukkah, that's a good question. So I want to give you a quick thing of Rav Moshe. That Rav Moshe mentioned that buying the lottery is not included in the Isur of Kuvya because the dollar is worth the dream of becoming a millionaire. So it has a lot to do with how much money are you losing. Has a lot to do with are you doing it for entertainment versus are you doing it for making a living. Has a lot to do with that also. So if a person only on Hanukkah for entertainment, they're going to be using the way I use the nickel, it was worth the fun to lose the nickel. But if you're playing dreidel for a few $1,000s, then perhaps you got a Yisro the Rabbanan here. Okay, bye. More than a perhaps, but again, halach li Yisro. Matilde chaloshin, the last line of the Mishnah was mamash a contradiction. Everything is gavaldik. Why Rabbeinu HaKadosh? He's speaking about a lottery. So he uses the words mayface. Mayface means casting a lot. Then when he comes to the Kahanim, he uses the words chaloshin. It's a nayavort. And the mamash, Rabbi says, Matilin chaloshin al kachim, avoloy al amonos. Make up your mind. Could you or can't you? So let me just say this out by heart. Guys, Kahanim have gavaldik amailas. Where's Omri? And there's a reason, but people that are very, very efficient become also a little bit tense because everything has to be perfect. And the Kahanim potentially would quarrel with each other. And there, if you have a carbon that was geschachten, and you have to divide the meat for the Kahanim, if one kohen will feel that his chaver got a shtickle bigger than him, by Kahanim, they will take a fight. And to prevent fighting by the Kahanim, they allow Kahanim to make lotteries. Again, then it's a gzeda, like zeta, they might end up measuring. They said by Kahanim, you're good. So that's the beginning of the Mishnah. But if the Mishnah says that for Kahanim, because there the potential of fighting is greater or quarreling, so to prevent it, you can make a goydel on Shabbos and on Yontiv. So how does the Mishnah end? It doesn't fit. So I'm going to be
Don't we say Ein Shvus B'Mikdash? What's the chiddush?
Very good. So let's go. Very good. So Tzvika saying Ein Shvus B'Mikdash. But again, so why? But we're saying more than that. We're saying they wanted to take away potential fights by the Kahanim. They didn't need to use that instrument of Ein Shvus B'Mikdash. But why not Alamanis? So I'm going to be Yaakov. B'rei the Bas Yaakov. Whenever you have B'rei the Bas, right, you have here on the side, he brings that Mishum Sha'aviv Lo Hayahagim, Lefikach Lo Yiskiroi. And he brings that from Rashi native. Anyways, that what? Avol Lo Yalamana Shel Choyel must be Yontiv. That if there are parts of, let's say, a carbon shlomim, just an example, that can be eaten for 2 days, a carbon that was geschachten yesterday, and it wasn't yet divided, for that you can't do a goydel on Yontiv. Mark Shita, no. Maldetema, it wasn't even made today. From yesterday, that you have to divide just by approximation. Maldetema hoyluksiv, a pasuk in Hosea, that va'avcha is kimirive koyim, that your nation are like quarreling kohanim. That's the source that we see that kohanim have this potential of being quarrelers. So therefore, you would think that to prevent that type of fight, afilam is the choil, nami kumash malam. We don't say that. Something that is of Shabbos, like we just learned yesterday, right there. Okay, so then you can over or trump this generally sort of making lotteries. If something came from the week, maybe just to add a sfarim, that if it's meat from yesterday, it's not that chashuv, maybe. It's not that chashuv, it's not that fresh. So one kohen won't be that bothered if his chaver gets a piece that has 3 millimeters, 3 ounces more, nishkaferlach. So there you go back to the normal Isur D'Rabbanan of not making a lottery. I like that. Let me word the opposite. Tzvika said, I ain't shvus b'mikdash. We just learned to trace. It's not a hard and fast rule. There are many times that we make a shvus b'mikdash. It's an Isur D'Rabbanan. So if you have kachim that was geschachten yesterday, that you want to divide with the Kahanim, this is mamash kachim. We say, the Mishnah concludes here, Avoloi alamonos. Now that we quoted Rabbi Yaakov Berei de Bas Yaakov, let's see how far we can go. This is Gan Eden. Next statement. Rabbi Yaakov Berei or Barak de Bas Yaakov, you have to know how to touch this. Here are the words. Kol shechaveiroi nenesh al yadoi. Anyone who has his chaver being punished on his account. So let's say Reuven hurt Shimon. God is going to punish Reuven, right? Because he hurt Shimon. So Shimon is the cause. I know it sounds this way, but it's not this way. The victim. Shimon is the cause for Reuven to get punished. Shimon himself cannot go into God's mechitzah. Whoa, how does that make sense? Nebuch, when he's getting hurt twice, first Reuven knocks Shimon on the head. Then the Eibusher is going to go be manish Reuven, and what Shimon is at fault for that? Avada not. So we have to limit the statement. One of the ways of understanding the statement is that when someone is a victim of an aggressor, they should daven to the Eibusher that they should be protected from the aggressor. But they should not actively daven to God for God to punish the aggressor. That's for the Eibusher. That's the Eibusher's business. That's one way of understanding it. So I'm allowed, I'm a chuyev to protect myself. Not only that, I can even be part of figuring out whether it is through my efforts, through davening, to be protected. But if I'm going to be involved in the punishment, then we're not saying it's awesome, but then this lends so much background to appreciate better Igeres Chafei, right? The whole vart of the Alter Rebbe, of the Baal Shem Tov, that everything is Hashgacha Pratis, and if Reuven wrongs me, even though Reuven will get punished, as far as I am concerned, the Eibusher was dealing with me. I deserved it anyways. So Bechlal has nothing to do with Reuven, right? Yosef wasn't even angry at his brothers. It wasn't them. Okay. Now, Minolon, where do we learn such a statement from? And we're going to have a few attempts. Vayomer Hashem mi yifates Achav. Achav was a very wicked king, and Hashem wanted him to go to battle where he was going to die in the battle. There was a battle in the place called Ramot Gilad, but Achav had around him Nevi'im, and before he went to war, he would ask his Nevi'im whether he's going to succeed. So Hashem was asking in the heavens who was going to seduce Achav by giving him information which would lead Achav to think that he'll be Matzliach, which is why he'll go to battle and he'll get killed there. So different neshamot, malachim were giving God suggestions what they're willing to do. And by then, Achav had already, and Izebel had already murdered Navos. Navos was a neighbor, he had a Kerem, and Achav wanted to buy his vineyard, and he didn't want to sell it. So Izebel made a plan. Why are you even offering to buy it? He doesn't want to sell it. They paid false witnesses that testified that he cursed God and the king, and for that he was put to death. And Achav was the closest relative, and he killed him, and then he took that vineyard. So Navos was angry at Achav in the heavens. So when he heard that God is asking who's going to be Mafata Achav, so this spirit went out. And he told God what he plans to do. Okay, the suggestion of giving Achav wrong information about the war, that was not even God's, that was him. Say, I'm going to go out. Allow me, God, to give false nevuah to real neviim. And they're going to hear from me, Navos, not knowing that I'm telling them a sheker, that, Achav is going to win the battle. And therefore he's going to go there and he's going to fall there, and he was meant to fall there in battle. So when he gave that offer to God, so Vayomer, this goes on the Eibusher, Tefata, good. I agree to the plan. The Gam Tuchal, and you'll succeed. But now it says, say, go, Va'aseiken. Say is already not a good statement. And for Chmil, who was that Ruach Rabbi Yechanan, Mavlis Sanhedrin, Ruach Shel Navos, and when Hashem told him at the end, go, God told him, you're suggesting to do something that's not truthful. God says, okay, but go out. Go out means you no longer can be with me. So that's Araya. That's the Chaveru Nenash al Yodei. Here the Nenash was more. He was involved in getting back at Achav. So the Gemara says that's not a raya. The Dilma, the reason why God told him to say was not because he was involved in his nenash. No, good. It's good that he got to Achav, but he told a sheker. He suggested doing it through a sheker. And it says, that those who tell lies cannot be established. So that was different. So Ella, another source. And now we're going to go into the whole Sanhedrin and Nebuchadnezzar. So people don't appreciate how evil and wicked Nebuchadnezzar was. So one of the things, as we'll learn over here, is that Nebuchadnezzar, who was Malach, the Melech in the world, he would make a lottery every day, and he put all the kings in his lottery, and the king that was taken out, Nebuchadnezzar brought him to his palace, and he had Mishkav Zechur with him. Okay. And ultimately, when he died, Nebuchadnezzar, so God told him that Sovata Koloin Mikavoid, that you have been sated, right? Sevilla, instead of getting Kavoid, you are sated with Koloin, with shame. And God tells Nebuchadnezzar, Shesei Gamata, V'ha'orel, you and the Orel, you are going to be punished together. Go drink together. Now, who does the Orel refer to? So says the Gemara, Savata Kolin Mikavai, these are words that God is telling Nebuchadnezzar. Shesei Gamate V'ha'orel. So one time, Tzidkiyahu, the king, Nebuch, fell in the lottery. And as we'll see in a moment, that Nebuchadnezzar attempted to have Mishkav Zechur with Tzidkiyahu, HaMelech. And now it looks like that Tzidkiyahu was happy that he came in the lottery, because he says, you know what, let Nebuchadnezzar sin with me, good, like this will get punished more. That's the Havamina here, that Tzidkiyahu was somehow willingly going along because he wanted for Nebuchadnezzar to get a greater punishment, and that's why in one place in the whole Nach, we refer to Tzidkiyahu as the Orel, not God forbid that he was an Orel. Orel meaning that he's like, he doesn't belong in Hashem's Mechitza. He's somehow banned from Hashem's Mechitza. That's the Havamina. The Gemara says, absolutely not. Tzidkiyahu is a tzaddik, and you're not reading the pasuk correct. Number one, the Kulikran Nebuchadnezzar said. When it says that God told Nebuchadnezzar, you go drink from Gehenna. Drink the ha'arel, not you and the arel. The hey arel, says Rashi. You became exposed. Your arlo will become exposed in Gehenna. It's all God's punishment to him. And furthermore, just for the record, Tzidkiyahu, the king Tzidkiyahu, is tzadika, because my Havalei Lamevedle. What could he have done? Right? There was nothing. The fact we have Chazals describing the pain that Tzidkiyahu felt when he fell in that lottery. So we're going to come back to the story in a moment, but we're looking for a source for this Gavaldik statement that Kol Shechavein Nenesh Al Yadoi Ein Machnisin Oisoi B'Mechitzos Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Elo Zakti Gemara Mehachem. When it says a Pashut, it says Gam Onoish L'Tzadik Lo Tov. To punish, even for a tzaddik, is not good. We, Anand, like the Rebbe says, we are Payala the Yamama. That there has to be punishment for the Shoim, that's the Oibishter's Cheshboinus. Let the Oibishter do it. You know, Megaldelin is Chos Alidei Zakai. It's not a mitzvah to go out to be a prosecutor. The world needs them, but not you. That for a tzaddik, punishing the wicked is not good. And it doesn't say it's bad, it says it's not good. So says the Gemara, you know what it means? It's not good. That's because we speak in a refined way. Not good means it's bad. And as it says, Kiloi Keil Chafetz Resha. Ato Lo Yigur Chara. That with you, God, no Ra can abode with you. Tzaddik Ata Hashem. V'lo Yogur B'Megur Chara. So if someone is involved in punishing a Rasha, they're called Ra. Well, they're called Loi Toiv. Loi Toiv means Ra, so they can't live. They lose a certain level. Again, the application means, according to many Rishonim, is that if you were wronged, don't daven for God to punish that person. Daven that God should protect you from that person. Don't be involved in the punishment of the Rishonim. It has to happen. There's a Irish that is the Balabas. You be involved in rewarding the tzaddikim. You be involved in doing good. Now, before we go back to Nebuchadnezzar, why did the Mishnah say umatilin chaloshin ala kachim? Says aloshin. Ma ifrekti gemara masha da hay chaloshim. Stam lohoy that in the Mishnah is with a nun, at least by me a lang nun. Here it's with a mem, but they are interchangeable. Normally it's Lashon HaKodesh versus Aramish. It's just ironic that in the Mishnah that's Lashon HaKodesh, it's written mit Nun. And here in the Gemara that's Aramish, it's mit Mem. Normally it's the opposite way around. But the Seder, how do we know that it's Lishon the Puro? How do you know that it means a lottery? That Kohanim are allowed to make lotteries to see who's getting what portion for kachim that was slaughtered on Yom Tov or on Shabbos? Because it says, again, going back to this Nebuchadnezzar, that the God is saying about it, how did you, such a great king, fall down from the heavens? Leil means you used to be a shining one. Ben Shachar, you were the son of dawn. What happened to you? Nigadet Ares, you were cut down to the ground. Choilish al goyim. You know why? Because you cast lotteries on all the goyim. That's the choilish. That he made lotteries. And Amar Abba Barafuna Malamed, look at this evil person. Shoyamatel Pul al Gedoyre Malchus. Why did he make a lottery? Leida, Eze ben Yoimai Shal Mishkav Zechur. Who is going to be forced to have a relation? Well, who is going to be sodomized by me today? And as it says, that after he died and he came to Gehenim, so first Kol Malchi Goyim Kulam, all of the kings, they rested after he died. That means they were all terrified by him. Now, there were many kings in history that became Amoshel Bekipa, so they charged taxes and they took away some autonomy, but they weren't terrified the way kings were terrified of Nebuchadnezzar because of this. That they calmed down, they rested from this Mishagas of Mishkav Zechur, that he was sodomizing them. And for Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Kol Yom of Shalois Rasha, as long as Nebuchadnezzar was alive, no one was happy. Everyone was terrified. As it says that when he died, Nacha, Shakta Kol Haaretz, right? The earth has become calm, the earth has become tranquil. Then Pitzchurina, then everyone burst forth with song. Michlal da'at hashta lehavanina. V'amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Asur la'amid b'beis Shalois Rasha. If you know where Nebuchadnezzar lived, maybe even Saddam Hussein, another Russia, maybe he made his palace in that location. He called his plant that he was building for a nuclear Nebuchadnezzar, Tammuz 17. He was Mamash Azab, Ben B'nai Shalosh Rasha. So if you know where Nebuchadnezzar's house is, you cannot even walk in there. As it says that God said after he died that Usi'idim Yiraktusham, that demons are dancing there. It's such a place of tumah. And one day he came out on the lottery, and he, against his will, he was taken to Nebuchadnezzar. Hashem made a miracle to protect Tzidkiyahu. What's in Hashem? That God made a miracle that the orla of Nebuchadnezzar became extended miraculously 300 amas. That's it. That's called impotent. There's nothing he can do. And not only that, so long, everyone saw that. Everyone saw that the Eibusher did something phenomenal to Nebuchadnezzar to expose his disgustingness. It became so long that the Gashmis, it went around the whole table. As it says, going back to this pasuk, that God tells him, that you have been sated. God says, I was going to give you kavod. What did you do? You replaced the kavod with koloin, with fashemuns. That's the odol. You drink because you became as a odol. Let's have one more line. You know what happened? People were so terrified from Nebuchadnezzar. Imagine that when he came into Gehenna, the other Rishaim in Gehenna became afraid. Oh, look who came. And they call Yord the Gehenna Amru Shemalim Shalalemu, but maybe he's coming here invited to dominate over us. Oh, at least he'll be weak here like the rest of us. And that's the meaning of the pasuk when they told him, are you weak like us? Or it's an either or. You have to appreciate this by looking in the pasuk. Are you coming to rule over us? That's how powerful he was. So a baskel came out and it said, no. Memina amta. No. Who you are more beautiful than everyone else. That's the baskel telling Nebuchadnezzar. Don't even think that in Gehenna you can rule over them. You're just as despicable as everyone else. Rudah, go down. And v'hashkava esvarelim, and go lay to rest with all the other arelim. That was the end of Nebuchadnezzar. We're in the middle of the sugya to be continued tomorrow. Azamaisa. No lotteries on Shabbos. Charge your kids' interest. Wow, what a Gemara. Don't lose. Go.